Alright, so thank you everyone for coming to this Access Content Lab. Now, just to give some context as to the reason why we run the Access Content Lab, it's because when SYN was started back in, like, all the way back, like, early 2000s, there were, like, 5 main guiding principles. There was innovation was one of them. That was a core value that we were going to have. Participation, diversity, what was the other one? Independence. And access was another one. And it's something that we've always got to be sort of consulting ourselves about as to whether or not we're staying true to our values. And I think progressively we need to be doing more to be making every aspect of SYN more accessible, regardless of gender, regardless of ability, regardless of religion, race or creed. You should be able to make content freely, and you should be able to access as many parts of SYN as possible, which is why we've got Naomi and Ariane here, because they are the experts on access. So it's really good. Thank you both for coming here today.
That's okay.
Thank you. Now Amorette has done a great job at sort of taking the lead of this, so I'll also let you sort of take charge now, and then I'll be here to add really pointless bits of wisdom here and there. But I'm really not the expert on this. That's why we've got all these lovely ladies here. So, yeah, I am here for my face.
You're doing a very good job
there. Yeah. All right, cool.
Now just sit over there and look pretty, please.
Okay, very well.
So yes, as Blakey said, access. Yay, it's fun. It's basically broken into 2 parts. So we've got lovely Q&A with Naomi, who is from Disability Media Australia. Done a lot of work in TV. You did RMI TV. Previous to that.
Yeah.
And just wrapped up on a really cool feminism show on Channel 31. I was on the show. Yeah. Ariane Garner-Williams, also known as my sister. As you can probably tell, there's some disability stuff going on over here. So she's pretty good at that thing. Had many years experience. Yeah, 23 years. She still talks with her about, but we're working on it. So we'll start with our Q&A. We have formulated questions, and then shall you have any questions, we shall then ask them. Okay, so we'll start with Naomi. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. We just said that you Disability Media Australia.
Yeah. So I sort of started doing media stuff at RMI TV, as was said. And then around the time I finished university, I became very ill. I got ME/CFS, if anyone's familiar with that, and sort of became a person with a disability via that, and wasn't able to work for the next 2 years. And then, I got an admin job working at Disability Media Australia. Became general manager a few years later, and have worked on a number of shows on Channel 31 with people with disabilities, including training shows as well. So it probably relates to what you guys do here, specifically in terms of people who are new to it with disabilities and how to kind of provide access to those people. Yeah.
And through your time doing all those sort of disability programs, what were some of the challenges that you faced having to get people in those programs and work with the system?
Like actually getting people in, or?
Yeah, and what were some of the challenges as you went through like filming and production and?
Actual filming production. Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, because the shows we worked on, we had people with disabilities in pretty much every crew role. So we worked on No Limits in another show called Chair Chat, which were both on Channel 31. And what I found the biggest challenge was actually figuring out everybody's strengths. And trying to get people to kind of team up, because if you find you've got a group of people with disabilities working together, you want to figure out who can do what aspect of, you can't just assume that everyone can do everything that most people can do, so you team people up so that the skills are kind of correlating. So that would be probably the biggest challenge, is actually not being afraid to start those conversations with people with disabilities. Like if you see someone in a wheelchair, don't assume they can't walk, because they might actually be able to walk a few steps and get to a chair or something. Don't assume that someone with a vision impairment is completely blind. They might actually be able to see the desk in the radio studio, or there's various things that people with vision impairments can do that you might assume they can't because they've got a cane or a guide dog. so I think that's, just absolutely starting those conversations and not being afraid to broach the topic with people with disabilities to figure out what they can and can't do. That would be the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you came across like a particularly big problem, what did you sort of do to troubleshoot it? Or
again, just asking the person with a disability what can be done, because they're more familiar with their disability than you are. And they'll know, what technology is available. They'll be able to tell you exactly what the best way is to problem solve. I think for me doing media, the biggest problem has been working with people with hearing impairments, because it is sort of very intrinsic to what we do with community media. And the way to get around it usually costs quite a bit of money. So I think the biggest issue that I've found working in this area has actually been doing that fundraising to get interpreters, or to get people to do captions, or to get, if you've got a podcast, you need someone to do the transcript. And that usually costs money. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because most other things can be worked around with a bit of common sense and communication. But when it comes to people with hearing impairments, and it's really, really important to include people with hearing impairments in these things, even though it's easy to just sort of say, oh, that's outside our area. But it is actually, people with hearing impairments are some of the most excluded people in all of Australian society, really, or most societies. And if you can actually provide that access, then it's really important to do so.
What was the most rewarding part, really awful word, of working with disabled people in the media?
So the reason that's sort of awful wording is there's this idea that, and I get this a lot, people actually will say that must be a really rewarding work that you do, because they assume that it feels good to do charity. And that's actually a really terrible way to look at it, because it's not charity, it's access, it's equality, it's providing people with the same access that you would expect as an able-bodied person. So it's sort of not really, it should be the same as working with anyone else. It should not be like special rewards or cookies for doing that, if you like. But I think for me, something, and this is generalizing about people with disabilities, and but it is something that I found that sometimes confidence levels can be a little bit low, because people have been told, especially if someone was born with their disability, they might have been told all their lives, you can't do this, or I'll do that for you, or don't worry, someone else will take care of it. And so my way of dealing with that is very much to throw people in the deep end and say, just do it, whatever it is, whether it's operating a camera or presenting on screen, or being on screen freaks most people out if it's the first time they're doing it anyway. But I sort of find, because I've worked at RMITV where it's just been students of all types, and then working in disability media, I find there's a real confidence gap, which is again generalising. I did not find this working with Ariane, who is a very confident person. So I think if you were going to say what's the most rewarding thing, I would actually say just watching people's confidence go up when they actually participate in these things.
And lastly, what sort of advice would you give to these guys if they want to get D-Bods on their show? What would you advise?
D-Bods.
They do?
Yeah, that's what we decided to call ourselves.
Excellent.
We're slanging it in the cripple world. Yeah.
I think, like, from an organisational perspective, just make sure everything is as accessible as you know how to make it. Make sure that every event you do, make sure wheelchairs can get in there. Make sure that people with hearing impairments know that there will be an interpreter there if there is going to be an interpreter there. Make sure, so it's not necessarily about seeking people out and saying, how can I get them on my show? Make sure it's actually relevant to the show that you have that person on there. If they're a guest, or if they're a host, or like, it's got to be about the actual person and what they do, not just, hey, I've got a person with a disability on my show, check it out. But just making sure that everything is equal access is the best way to, people will come. And making sure that people with disabilities, if you want to advertise to people with disabilities, you can approach organisations like White House, and actually let them know, hey, SYN is a place that is accessible, why don't some of your volunteers come and help out on this, they might be interested. So actually going into those disability spaces and just making them aware that this is an accessible organisation, and you would like anyone who's interested to get involved. Yeah.
And if you want to get in contact with those organisations, here, I do the thing. I know those, so yes, email.
And also me.
Yeah, Ariane knows the stuff as well.
Yeah.
She knows the thing. All right, Ariane, we shall move on to you. Tell us a bit
Hello.
about yourself and how you got involved with SYN.
Well, the reason why I got involved with media in the first place, I went through a lot of bullying in school for obvious reasons. And I decided that, okay, I'm going to tell those people that doubt me and think less of me because I've got a disability, I'm going to tell them to shut the f*** up. So I basically heard of No Limits, right? And I knew my mum had said, you should volunteer at Grit Media, which is what DMA used to be called. You should volunteer, and she'd been saying this while I was still in school. So I thought, right, bloody hell, I'm going to do this. And then I went on to No Limits. And then I got mentored by this lovely lady here. And she said, would you like to get, we're doing this training program called Chat, which is training people to be more independent within, like, producing their own media. And so basically what you guys do here, but for people with disabilities in terms of TV. And I said, yeah. So through that, I produced my own shows and my own content. And SYN was basically a next step for me. And Amorette said, they're doing this training for this seasonal show called Raise a Platform. You should come and do it. And so I did. And I'm here. And I'm loving it. And I've come up with my own segment. My latest segment has been called Disability Rants. And I basically go on a rant about what shit about the disability sector, or what, you know, people can improve on to make hospitals more accessible or more understanding of people with disabilities. And we basically get angry, and we get a lot of people listening through that. Facebook a lot, don't we? Facebook a lot.
We have lots of angry Facebookers.
So if you know anyone with, and they're actually recruiting right now, I'll just drop that in there. So if you know anyone with a disability that would be interested in being in that particular show, drop us a line.
Or if you guys want to come and have a look at what we do, if you're still at what? About the disability thing, we're doing that as well. Having you come and sit to
Yeah, you can
laugh.
sit in on the show.
Because Ariane's pretty funny on the show. Anyway, moving on.
Thank you
Thanks,
for that.
Ariane. Really just slipped it in there. I'll pay you that $10 later. As a person with disability, what's important for you when you're accessing goods and facilities?
Okay. Nice understanding people. Number one, if people need help and you're gonna go, oh no, we can't do that, da, da, da. You know, no, you can't possibly come in, we don't have that accessibility. Okay, I won't come back ever again. Because I don't care, because if you're not gonna try, then there's no point. So you've got to be willing to make those adjustments in terms of access, in terms of your own sort of mind. If you have a positive outlook on people with disabilities, you're generally going to get more people with disabilities wanting to be around you / on your shows, because you're more accepting of that. So it's about access within people's minds as well as physical access. And when we're talking about physical access, we're talking ramps, we're talking clear spaces, we're talking being able to lead people with, like, we have a member of our team, her name's Veronica, and she's blind, and we have to have someone lead her into the room and sit her down. Now there is a particular way you have to do that. So you have to be open to learning new things in order to be accessible, friendly, because everyone is different and has different needs in terms of access.
So, oh yeah, go.
Yeah, I'll just say, we actually had one man who had a vision impairment who worked on ChairChat who operated a camera. And that actually worked fine because he had just enough vision that he could see what the framing looked like. Like he couldn't see detail, but he was one of the best people on this particular training group at framing the shot. So I think it's that thing of just do not assume anything about anyone. Like if a blind person says, "Can I operate a camera?" Give them a go at it. They might not be able to do it. In fact, there's a pretty good chance they can't do it if they have a vision impairment, but you know, there's a chance that they can do it, and they'll know better than you that it's worth a shot. So I think, yeah, just that sort of open-mindedness and, making sure people have opportunities.
What have you faced access-wise with SYN? What are some of the things you've dealt with?
Problems. Content labs being upstairs, which has obviously changed now, so I couldn't attend content labs prior to Amorette getting on the phone and saying, "My content lab's upstairs."
What about in studio? What sort of stuff?
In studio, it was more trying to get everyone, multiple wheelchairs in the studio at once, because a lot of our team members are in wheelchairs. So it's about organising who's going in first, who's going in second, because you often have to, and this is going to sound a bit criminal, have to make a bit of a line-up before you can actually enter the studio. And to say, okay, you're sitting there, you're doing this, and then
but
you
in a
find,
nice way.
in a nice
Could
way.
you please sit here? Would you like to do this thing today? Cool.
Amorette directs that. Often with me it's, Ariane, you're doing this, and you're sitting here, and then...
Stop talking, it's so silent.
And then other people, it's like, can you please sit here? Can you do
I'm the
this?
sister though, so that's different.
Yeah.
I'm
just taking the piss out of you,
Oh,
it's
thanks.
fine.
Thank you.
I've actually found, was working on ChairChat, I was actually the person going, alright, can you move here? And I was directing everybody where to sit. And then I'm working on the F word where the majority of people are actually able-bodied. And I found myself just automatically saying, you sit here, and you sit here, and you sit here. And people are looking at me like, what are you doing? We're adults, we can seat ourselves. But it's kind of, you get into that frame of mind where you've actually got to have a plan for where people are going to sit, or it's going to be a traffic jam. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to these guys trying to get the D-bods onto their show?
Okay. Do not be afraid of the D-bod. Always! Thank you, I'm here all week. Always ask them what they're willing to talk about, because there are a lot of people with disabilities that have been through a lot of crap. Some of that crap they don't want to talk about. So you say to someone, okay, what have you been through? They'll sit down, they'll tell you what they're willing to tell you, and then you say, okay, and how much of that are you willing to talk about? And what sort of topics do you want to talk about? And then they'll talk to you about that. Also, accessibility-wise...
Something about that, just quickly.
Yeah.
This is really, really important. If you've got someone with an intellectual disability, or sometimes people with autism, if it's depending on where on the spectrum they are, sometimes people will just say things because they'll feel comfortable with you, and you've got to kind of check in with them constantly. What are you comfortable saying in a public space? Because a lot of the times people will just say it if you ask them to say it, and you've got to kind of, sometimes you've just got to be very aware of the power dynamic in that situation. Because if you ask a question on air, they might just answer it because they feel pressured to answer it rather than actually having that sort of self-barrier. So it's really, really important, as I said, just to check in and make sure that you're not pushing someone past their boundaries.
And make sure that they understand fully when you're talking about not pushing people beyond their barriers, that, well, it seems like you're just having a chat and, they're with you and they're with the other guys, and that's fine. Make sure they are aware that this is going to go to air and it is public, and are you sure you want to be saying that? Because you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. And also with the other stuff, if I can get my words right today, what am I saying? You can also deal with mental illness within working with not just people with disabilities, anyone, and it can actually be quite debilitating. So if you talk about something that if you talk about someone dying perhaps, and they might not feel comfortable with that, and it might put them out for a couple of weeks. So you might want to run past them, okay, on the show we're going to be talking about this, this and this. If you're not comfortable with that, you can walk out and we'll call you back in when we're done. Because that's happened with one of our members as well in the past.
Any questions specifically for these guys at all? Yeah.
I've got one.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I'm trying to work out more and more with stuff that I'm doing is sort of I'm trying to make things more accessible, and then I'm trying to work out how is the best way to communicate that something is now accessible, or that we definitely would like to have people feel as though something is now accessible. For example, I want people to know that content labs are accessible to everyone. I want everyone to come to them. And is it as simple as me just saying this is now accessible, or is there a more direct way to go about it?
It depends who you're talking to, because for me...
The SYN community, obviously.
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about disability-wise. Because for me, social media is a good thing, but other people with, say, when you're blind, you have like one of our participants has a screen reader, so they might prefer an email, or so it's just to do with maybe even calling the person and saying, look, if I have future details for you, how would you like me, what's your most preferred method of being contacted? How would you like me to tell you about that?
Okay.
And then just make a mental note of that, or maybe write it down somewhere and say, this person prefers a contact, this prefers to be called, this person can just read it on social media like most of the group can, this person needs an email, that
Well,
sort of
the
thing.
thing is too that with SYN is that SYN doesn't actually, when you fill out your membership form and it's got all those details, SYN doesn't actually categorise and ask about disability. So you're not going to know 100% who is disabled and who isn't. And then even if we did have that question, there's going to be a percentage of people who don't want to say, which is fair enough, or they don't even really know about it.
To have, do you have any access needs at the bottom of all your membership forms?
Yeah, we have something similar to that, but about contacting people, emails are really good. I know at least 12 people who are disabled at SYN at the moment, active volunteers who don't use Facebook.
Okay, so you've
email
got to
can be
consider communication channels as well.
Can be extremely helpful. And updates, the SYN volunteer updates, those are audio and they're emailed as well. So that's a really good way to go about it.
And those are really good. I've read a couple of those and they're really good for accessibility too.
The volunteer updates? Yeah.
The other thing is, because I guess there's two levels to it. One of them is communicating with your membership, and the other one would be recruiting to the membership, I would assume.
Yeah, and we have a very structured format for that deals with
recruiting
disability.
with people with disabilities.
I
Okay.
literally did it just the other week, so
Okay.
that's pretty
Yep.
on point. Any more questions for these guys specifically?
I've still got
Another one, yep.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So one thing that I was trying to read more into, and that I'm wondering you're probably more expert in it, is this idea of plain English communication.
For
Yeah,
people with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a thing, if you go to Fiona,
Yeah.
and you literally ask her to look in her handover folder,
Yeah.
there's a thing in there that's plain language that I put in there
Okay.
earlier.
So just for people who are here, what is plain language, and sort of
Yeah.
why would you use it? Where would you use it?
Basically, it's just using, just simplifying it, what you're saying down to the bare bones of it, and to what's absolutely important, and not using huge vocabulary and keeping it simple. Just because people with
Don't
intellectual.
make it too overcomplicated.
Yeah. Basically, it is just use simple language because some people have intellectual disabilities and they're going to have trouble with more complex language. And that's just makes communication much more accessible.
So, for
yeah.
example, on run sheets, making sure that the key points are included on that kind of stuff as
Yeah.
well.
Like Raise the Platform, we don't even have a run sheet for our show. We do everything verbally.
We
Okay, like, I'm not saying to do
discuss
that,
it
but yeah, that's just what we do because we know that everyone can access a format of words. We don't have any deaf people on our show at the moment, so we haven't had to deal with that. If there's no more questions, there's a question. Yes, excellent.
What is the best way to approach someone about a disability and how it might affect them in the larger
You
scale?
literally you can just ask someone. You can be like, so recognize this thing. You have a disability. Well, you don't have to say you have a disability. You'll be like, I wanted to ask, how is it best for you to access the show? Is there anything special that you need me to do? And
I
they're
think
most
just be-
likely going to tell you.
Be conscious, it's probably not something that they're self-conscious about. This is part of their life. They're not going to be offended if you talk about it. In fact, not talking about it is probably
More offensive.
more offensive, yeah. So if you're just straightforward and don't make assumptions and just say, hey, I'm just wanting to make this as accessible as possible, can you let me know what you can and can't do in this situation? And people are usually more than happy to just go through it with you.
Or
And they'll have their speech as well that they do with everyone who asks, because this is, again, it's their life. Yeah.
Even when you're saying even how does your disability affect you, and how could we make it as easy for you to do this? If there's something that someone's they'll divulge all you need to know pretty much. But if there's somewhere that they don't want to go, they'll tell you I prefer not to go there. And then you just have to basically say, okay, I fully understand that, just as long as I know how to work with you, that sort of thing.
And I think also just be aware that there might be some invisible issues that you're not aware of. Like for me with ME, I have real trouble with scents. Like if there's anyone wearing perfume in the room, I'm going to get pretty sick pretty fast. People with autism may struggle in certain environments when it comes to too much stimulation. So there's different things that can be going on with people. So I think don't be afraid to sort of ask about those sorts of things as well. And obviously the more you kind of interact with people, the more you learn what to expect. But again, everyone is different, so it pays to ask every time.
Any more questions? No, we're going to move on to a different segment of the program. I'm going to do a bit of a lecture. Yay, you get to listen to me talk.
Cool.
Excuse
Do
me,
we-
and then you move to a seat over here.
Over here? Okay.
Thank you very much. So we're going to have a chat about Raise the Platform. Yay!
You happy
It's not
for me
literally, yeah, you can stop.
to stay with
Um,
us? Yep.
Obviously the chat is not be on the show, although be on the show. Basically we're going to chat about some of the people who are on the show at the moment, who have unique access needs. Ariane's needs are pretty minimal. She needs no chairs in her way, basically. We have, as Ariane stated...
And I need my microphone to be adjusted.
Yeah, she needs a microphone in front of her face because, if it's away from her, obviously we all know what that means. We have Veronica, as Ariane stated before, who is blind. So I lead her in every single time that we have a show. I panel. No one on Raise the Platform can panel independently at the moment. Basically, I lead her in and I sit her down. I put her microphone. I let her know where it is. But the thing with Veronica, obviously, we do a lot of gesture cueing when we're saying mics on, stuff like that. We might actually verbally say it, or we might just press the buttons and assume that everyone can see what we're doing. For Veronica, I count her in for every single thing, and she never forward announces. She can back announce because she's got an extraordinary memory, so that's pretty lucky. She can remember songs like that. So those are some of the things that we need to do with her. Pretty simple. I'm sure lots of people say, oh, we've got 10 seconds, mics are going on now. I'm sure lots of people do that anyway. But yeah, we specifically count her down, and every time we come out, we let her know how many songs we're playing sweepers, how long those go for. It's a constant dialogue, just to make sure that she's informed. We also have, who else on the show can we talk about?
Stella.
Thank you, that's who I was thinking of. Stella. Stella is in a wheelchair and has cerebral palsy like Ariane, but Stella has a really slurred speech. It takes a long time to be able to understand her.
It's very slow as well.
Yeah, and she sort of says a lot of consonants, but not a lot of vowels. So it takes some guesswork as well. I've known her 7-ish years, and I still struggle sometimes to understand what she's saying to me. What we do is we plug her iPad in through the auxiliary in the studio, and she just types out fabulous segments. She's a genius. And we just literally play those through, and if she wants to talk and make comments on stuff, she just types it all out on her iPad and plays
she's
through
an
that.
incredible speller, so there's gonna be
Yeah.
no spelling mistakes.
Yes.
She
she's
got
very
out
good.
of a spelling bee because she misspelled eucalyptus in grade 3. So we're definitely not gonna have any spelling problems.
Yeah, we're just pumping up Stella here. Get her on your show, yeah. So yeah, that's something we do for her. And so you might assume that, or someone who can't speak very well, they're not going to be on the radio. But here she is, and she's on the radio, and she's great. Golden rules. I don't know if you want me to write them down or not. Write them down. I enjoyed my.
Or do you
really
want me to
bad
write them?
stuff.
Or
Yes,
yeah,
I
cool.
do. I have really bad writing, which
Right.
would become very evident. So golden rule number 1.
Rules. Did I spell golden right? I feel like I did. 1. Cool. Yeah.
Now I'm trying to remember what it is. Oh yeah, no assumptions.
No assumptions.
Yay. Number 2. Ask questions. That's always helpful. Asking questions.
Can I add one?
You may add one.
Number 3.
Yep.
Always communicate. Communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually watching something about the fire department in New York, and they actually had a thing where it was like, it's never wrong, or there is never not a bad reason, if that makes sense, to actually tell someone what you're doing. So it's like, just double up, communicate everything.
Yeah.
Good call. Yeah.
Definitely working with diverse people, you get really used to telling people everything. That's good. Don't ever pressure someone to disclose. You can summarize that somehow. Basically, disclosing, it's the same with anything. If I'm going to come out, if I'm talking on a show, I don't want someone to be like, oh, Amorette, you're bisexual, just tell us all about that. Because I'm going to be like, great. Could have told you that on my own time. This might not be the time for me to talk about that. You don't want someone to just say, Ariane, oh, you've got a physical disability. No one can see that. Just tell us how you feel about that. And everyone's going to be like, no, because that's not the only thing about me. So
for example, people on the radio know I'm in a wheelchair, but they don't know my specific disability, because it's up to me whether I want to disclose that.
yeah. Also, most of your shows aren't going to be disability related, so it's sort of key to raise the platform that we talk about disability. And the thing is too that Ariane might never ever disclose her disability, but she still knows stuff about it. She can still be on the show. And I'm a sibling of someone with a disability. I don't have a disability, but I'm on the show and I know about things in disability because of that experience. So obviously Ariane's interested in other things beside being physically disabled. And that's obviously, your shows aren't going to necessarily be tied to disability. So disability is not the sum of someone's character, and it's not all that they know about. So obviously on most of your shows you're not going to need them to talk about their disability, but should you ever talk about something disability related and they are on your show, just ask them first if they want to disclose that and if they want to talk about that. I actually have a funny story about it. Veronica, when she first came on our show, she'd done her training and I only met her a couple of times, and I knew that she was blind, and her mum sat in with her on her first show to make sure that she was all okay with what was happening, and we counted her in and all that sort of stuff, and we just tested the waters. And after the first break, after we introduced her and Veronica just talked a little bit about her interests and stuff, we went to a song, and her mum went, "Aren't you going to ask her about her being blind?" And I'm like, "No, not unless she wants to talk about it. Do you want to talk about it?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I can bring it up, I could talk about some stuff." And she literally spoke about being blind for like 5 seconds before she launched into every single piece of technology that she owned, which was incredibly cool. She has, and T played with it the other day, this amazing talking colour detector. So she can just hold that to any piece of clothing or fabric, and it just like tells her immediately what it is. It's one of her really cool things. She's got her iPad, which has voiceover, so it reads out her whole screen to her. She has it on her phone, and she looks crazy when she uses it because she holds it like this, and you can just see her going like this and going like this full on, like with her hand, and that's her scrolling through every single application till she gets to the one that she needs and double tapping it. And she's incredibly speedy. It's sometimes scary. She'll be like, "Oh, I'm just checking my messages." You know, I'm done. And I'll be like standing there like waiting. She'll be like, "No, Emma, I finished like 3 seconds ago." "Oh, sorry, I didn't notice." So yeah.
Don't necessarily assume that someone wants to talk about their disability, but check.
Yeah.
And then, although I suppose someone's disability does make up what they might want to talk about,
Yeah.
but like
also,
it depends how much they will actually talk
Yeah,
about it.
but the thing is too that if you're going to be like, if Ariane applied for Player One, for instance, she might really want to talk about games, and Justin might be like, "Oh hey, like this really cool thing came out, this piece of technology that could be really helpful for disabled people. Do you want to talk about it?" And Ariane could either be like, "Yeah, that sounds sick," or "No, I want to talk about the new Sims. Like, come on now, Justin. Obviously, I don't want to talk about that." So, just
guys, sorry.
sorry, Sims all the way. Yeah, so all that stuff is really, really important. Also, I want to talk very briefly about intellectual disability, because we have had a recent round of training which we had a lot of people who want to further develop in SYN, but lots of them they're either autistic and on the autism spectrum, or they have mild intellectual disability, and it's really important for you guys to know exactly what that means. Basically, it can impair some of their decision making, the way they think about things, and as Naomi said, they can be very suggestive to what you're saying. So if you're like, "Are you okay with that?" nodding, they will then nod at you and say, "Yeah," because they know that's what you want them to say, and they're taking cues from you. So if you're talking to someone and you suspect that they might have a mild intellectual disability, or someone has told you that they do, be careful of the way that you gesture and the way that you say things, and because you don't want to suggest anything to someone and make them feel uncomfortable.
I think just something to add to that, like I once was working with a guy with autism who he came out as gay while I was recording, because we were talking about, I forget what we were talking about, but he just sort of blurted that out because that was where his line of thought went. And I actually double checked with him, "Do you want that to go to air? Is that something you're comfortable doing?" And because I had a funny feeling that maybe he wouldn't want it, but he'd just gone with the flow of it because he wasn't really sort of, just the way he thought didn't really facilitate that in the moment. So I double checked and he said, no, I actually don't want that. So I think just be very careful. I mean, obviously if you go live to air, that sort of thing's not going to be editable later. But if someone does say something on camera and you're not sure, just check. Make sure you check, and don't. Again, the body language really, really important. As Amorette was saying, don't sort of try and get a particular answer out of them. You got to make really, really sure that you understand what they actually want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, 1 second. I'll let you go in a sec. So innovation and access actually go pretty hand in hand with some of those things that we were talking about. We actually have a test to see if you guys are cool. No, you're already cool. It's okay. You're here. You're cool. Can I have,
Yeah, sure.
so I'm gonna draw a person.
See you tomorrow.
We have a lady who her gender is a lady, and she's waving at you. This lady is really happy because she's going to be on your show. She's really excited about it.
I'll sit down. Yeah.
Here is our lady, yay! She has 2 hands, sorry, she's not an amputee. Yes, so our lady is deaf. She cannot hear you. And that's an issue for you, because radio is a talking medium, traditionally. Silence isn't really an option. What would you suggest? She really, really wants to be on the radio. What would you suggest that you do to have her on your show?
Either find someone who sort of specialises in working with deaf people and ensuring that her lip reading is good enough for her to see when people are talking, when people aren't, because that would probably be the biggest issues, that she might talk over someone.
Yep. Justin, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, like keep when you do say stuff, keep it just as simple as possible. Do they have a sign language interpreter? Can you get one? That would help, I'm guessing.
Yes, it would help.
Use as many very easy to follow hand signals as possible.
Yeah, hand signals are really important. You're not going to want to have to count someone in and they're going to go, what are you doing? Anything else? Can you think of anything?
I was just wondering if, like, you know how you mentioned Veronica, who's blind and she's got that tech on her phone and iPad that reads out. There'd be something similar for
Yes, that's the last thing we were looking for. When people are deaf, they usually can't speak very well. They'll have a very heavy lisp, or they're just like, I'm not going to do that. So you can do the whole iPad thing as well. They can prepare their own stuff. Also, you're right about potentially talking to people who know deafness better than you do. Another thing, because we get Stella to pre-prepare all her stuff, this person might not just want to be, you might suggest that they're not a presenter, that they contribute to the show every couple of weeks, whatever they want to do, and they can talk about whatever it's related to, sports, cars, music. They've suggested probably not music. But
you
yeah,
can
whatever they
just
want to talk about.
pre-record it, or they can do a segment on your Facebook page or something. They don't always have to come in.
Blogging, that's another avenue you can look down. I know lots of deaf people who blog, and it's one of their best outlets. And they're very, very nuanced in exactly what they want to say, because they've thought about it a lot. Do we want to do another one?
Yeah, I think doing
Make it harder. Alright, it's harder. Okay, so we'll go with this lady again. Really bad drawer. I shall try to draw this thing. Lady. She's standing on she has really long legs.
What are we looking
So
A wheelchair.
She's in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I told you I was a
You
bad
can't
Yeah.
draw a wheelchair.
That's a
I can't draw a wheelchair.
Just
Sorry.
use
No,
the,
you're right.
just pretend I'm
No.
like deaf or something.
No, we're not doing that one. Okay, so she's
What are we doing?
got a wheelchair user. This wheelchair user is also blind. How would we accommodate someone who has physical access needs who is also blind?
assuming they have a handler, make sure you're in constant contact with the handler.
Yep, they might have a carer or a support worker, that's true.
Actually not use the word
Handle is probably not the right word. Yeah.
Just touch upon that point.
Yep.
Is there terminology that
Yep,
is
so
Yes.
when we talk about, that's a really good question. When we talk about disability, I'm Ariane's carer. I'm directly related to her and I help her on a daily basis. Whereas if Naomi was working with Ariane and Naomi got paid for that work, she would be a support worker. So basically the difference is I don't get paid and I'm related, or I might be someone who has adopted Ariane or something similar, whereas Naomi is paid employee.
I think it's also really important to remember if someone has a support worker, the support worker works for the person with a disability, so don't talk to the support worker. And if you want to communicate with the person with a disability, don't talk to the carer, talk to the person with the disability.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the most common things that people do. Working in this field, like because my disability is invisible, people will often assume that I am the carer, even though I'm just the friend hanging out or whatever it is, and they'll, like if you have to book a hotel room or something, they'll turn to me and ask me questions.
So yeah.
And actually it's like, no, actually my friend in the wheelchair can speak for themselves.
Yeah. So support
yeah.
workers and carers, they can be really great to have. Like I've had a lot of chats with the support workers and carers of the people on Raise the Platform, and it's mainly feedback. So Veronica did a great time on air, she had a really fun time, she slipped up here, I think she's feeling a bit bad about it. And they're like, yeah, cool, I'll chat to her. So if it's about access stuff, you want to talk to that person first. Our person is blind, they can speak to you, so they probably already know what's up. Anything else that they might need
Can I add
access
something
with?
else?
Yes, you may.
On the I'll just do it quickly. On the language, when we talk about language that's acceptable when you're talking about people with physical disabilities, or either just people with disabilities in general, there are some words that you, as people in society and what we call able-bodied people, that means you don't have any form of disability. We don't like people might just go randomly on your show, they might, oh, man, that's so retarded. People don't like the word retarded. Or, I had a spaz attack the other day.
Yeah. That's
No.
so lame. Not cool.
Not cool.
Not cool to say.
You've got to take, even though you might not have a person with a disability on your show, you've got to take notice of the people that work within SYN, okay? Like me and Amorette. Amorette doesn't even like those words. She'll say, hell no, don't use those words.
I do death glare, you'll know. Yes.
But also think about the listeners, because you don't know who's listening. Someone with a disability could be listening, right into the station and go, blah blah blah, this person used this word, I'm so angry, send. And then your show gets cut off.
Yeah.
So you've got to really watch what you're saying, how you're saying it. There's a lot of words that you should just not go there.
Alright, we're going to quickly finish up with our last little thing. So she's also blind, so I drew some sunnies, so we all know. What would she need, seeing as she is blind?
Someone to help her in the studio.
Yep.
Apart from also being.
Mm-hmm. Just
Like the same thing that you would with anybody in a wheelchair, you're going to want to get all the obstacles out of the way, make the access as easy as possible.
Yeah, you probably have to push her in there, because she can't drive herself.
You're going to probably want to hope you're not in Studio 3.
Yeah, you're going to want to hope you're not in SYN Nation. Although, I think you can probably get one wheelchair in there, but in 90.7 you can get like
but
3.
yeah, you probably could.
Yeah, you'd have to really squeeze her in.
You would want to communicate at every point. Your run sheet, you want to make your run sheet verbal, really.
Yeah.
And you'd be counting down when you're going into breaks as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah, coming out of breaks. So Mike's on.
Okay.
Most of the time, what we do when we're on air and we're verbally communicating that we're going to a break, we'll say, oh, it's time for a song, and up next we're going to play blah-de-blah, blah-de-blah. And then as soon as we put it off, we just say, mics are off now, you're cool, talk if you like. Yep.
When you're doing the countdown, is there a specific frequency that you should be counting down, or is that just really dependent on the person?
I do every minute, and then when we get to 30 seconds, I'll say 30 seconds, and then we get to 5. And we start with 5. She's pretty on the ball.
Okay.
But you'd be reading that per person, seeing who
Yeah.
works best.
So if I had a deaf person and a blind person, I would communicate both ways. So if I was doing 30, I'd do 30-0. And I would obviously say that out loud. So I'd say 30 seconds till on air.
With communication with blind people as well, one thing we had a guy who was hosting a TV show, and it's a bit odd to kind of communicate things verbally when you're doing a TV segment. So what we would have was a piece of string, and we would tie it around his ankle, and we would sort of tug on it, and that would be, if we tug twice, you've got a minute. If we tug 3 times, you've got, and there'd be a countdown with that. So there's things that might seem very silly when you're doing them. But there's ways around these things. Sometimes you just sort of apply a bit of logic.
You've got to see what works for what person.
Yeah.
And that all comes down to the communication.
Okay.
Very true.
Yeah, so it's really something that's... It seems like the takeaway from a lot of this is communicate. And then from that, work out how you can develop systems for people.
Yeah. And also, with the whole not disclosing thing as well, if someone applies to your show, I'm going to bet like $5 that you don't have, do you have a disability on your application form? Don't put it on there, it's not necessary. But if they literally email you and they're like, hey, I want to be on your show, BT Dubs, got the disability, you can just be like, cool, what do you need? And they will know. And if they don't know, then they can find out pretty quickly, because they're going to go in the studio and be like, crap, things are needed. And you're like, cool, we'll make sure that happens next time. And don't be afraid to mess things up. Say the wrong thing and you're like, oh no, I've said retarded in front of someone, oh geez, what do I do? Don't be like, oh, I'm so sorry I said retarded in front of you. Just don't say it again. That's sort of your main point of call. And if things mess up in the studio, like Stella, her iPad is annoying, but she has such great things to say that I don't even care. The other day we had 3 times where it messed up, and every single time back, oh, we're going to hear from Stella. And we're not going to hear from Stella. Okay then, blah, 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 continuing on the show. And that happened 3 times. And each time it was about a 5-second break. But there's nothing you can do about that. And what she had to say was really, really important. And she actually got quoted the other day on a tweet. So that was really cool with that. So she, even though it can be frustrating at times, and you can be like, oh God, that sounded really bad, or things are messing up, there's always next time, and next time's going to be better, because every time something happens, you're going to learn from it.
And I almost feel as though the quality isn't necessarily derived from how something is presented, but more what is presented. So 3 times it takes for something to play off the iPad. Eventually you do get something that's really meaningful and a good takeaway.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the audience will be aware, obviously, if there is an iPad. Voicing things that there is a person with a disability.
And I know that it's a big thing on SYN to not don't point out that there was an issue. It's okay if someone has literally something in the studio that they rely on. It's okay to feed back and let people know what's happening. The amount of times I've fed back Stella laughing, because it's really hard to hear her laugh, but it's hilarious that she's laughing. I'll just be like, oh yep, Stella is nodding and agreeing, they're good, I agree, blah 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 blah. Or Stella, ha ha ha, you're laughing, lols. That is okay. Like, it's understandable, and the people who are tuning in understand, and they're not going to criticise you
Stella's
for it.
iPad isn't working today, and make a joke out of it isn't a bad thing. They probably think it's funny as well, and therefore your audience will probably think it's funny. So it's not a bad thing to mention.
If you guys have literally any questions, that you can't think of, like right now, you can email me at raisetheplatform.syn.org.au. I'm going to be categorising this stuff and
Just on
sending
that,
it out.
can I add one more rule?
Yes, you may add
a
a rule.
fifth rule.
Yeah.
Fifth
Oh my
rule.
god. Too many rules.
One of the worst things you can do is try to help someone without actually checking in with them if they needed that kind
Oh
of help.
yes, I can't believe we didn't have that earlier.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Like if someone, and people do this on the street. They'll see a person with a wheelchair and be like, "I'll just push you," and they'll push them past the shop that they needed to get into. Or like, there's a lot of times when people offer unsolicited help. So, so
And
if
I
you are
told
going to
you the
help
writing
someone
was
and
bad.
you're trying to do the right thing and be helpful and make things accessible, check in first and just say, is this what you actually need? Because a lot of time it will be, sometimes it won't be, and you don't want to just do the wrong type of help because that can sometimes be very frustrating for people.
We're at the end of our session.
All right.
Thank you for all coming.
Round of applause, everyone. Good job.